Have you ever watched someone light a cigarette and felt something like pity? In a world where 1.3 billion people actively smoke, where entire social rituals are built around the cigarette break, where the addiction is engineered at a molecular level to be nearly impossible to escape, some people just quit. Not because they read the right book, not because they found the right patch. They looked at something that had controlled them for years, sometimes decades, and they simply decided they were done. Most people assume quitting smoking is about willpower, but psychology tells a different story. People who quit smoking aren't just resisting a habit, they've undergone a fundamental shift in how they see themselves, and that shift started long before they put down their last cigarette. Let's start with identity, because this is where everything changes. Most smokers who try to quit think of themselves as smokers who are trying not to smoke. Every craving becomes a test. Every urge is something to fight against. They're at war with themselves, and wars are exhausting. People who actually quit have done something different. They've stopped identifying as smokers entirely. They don't see themselves as smokers resisting temptation, they see themselves as non-smokers who used to have a habit. This sounds like the same thing, but it changes everything. When you're a smoker trying not to smoke, your brain is constantly monitoring for threat. The craving is the enemy, the cigarette is the forbidden fruit. Your entire mind is organized around the thing you're trying to avoid. But when you're a non-smoker, a craving is just a ghost from your past. It's not a test of character. It's not evidence that you're weak. It's just a sensation passing through, like a memory of an old relationship that no longer has any power over you. Here's what makes this more than just mindset. Within 20 minutes of quitting, your blood pressure and heart rate return to normal. Your hands and feet warm up. Your body starts recalibrating to a state it hasn't known in years. Most smokers don't even realize how abnormal their baseline has become until they feel what normal actually feels like. People who quit notice these changes. They pay attention to them. While still smokers focus on what they're losing, quitters have trained themselves to focus on what they're gaining. This isn't positive thinking, it's selective attention, and it makes all the difference. 2 hours in, the cravings begin. Moodiness, drowsiness, a tense feeling that sits in the chest. This is where most people fail. They interpret these sensations as evidence that quitting is too hard, that their body needs the cigarette, that the discomfort means something is wrong. But people who quit have learned to read these signals differently. They understand that nicotine hijacks the brain's reward system, flooding it with feel-good chemicals far beyond what it produces naturally. The discomfort isn't weakness, it's withdrawal, and withdrawal is evidence that the drug is leaving, not that you need more of it. 8 hours after that last cigarette, oxygen levels in the blood return to normal. The poisonous gas from cigarette smoke that's been taking up space where oxygen should be finally clears out. People who quit often describe this moment as feeling lighter, not emotionally, physically, like a weight they didn't know they were carrying has been set down. They notice because they're paying attention. They've made a decision to track the gains instead of mourning the loss. At 24 hours, something counterintuitive happens. Coughing increases. Most people would see this as a bad sign, evidence that the body is struggling, but people who quit understand this differently. The lungs are clearing out toxins. The coughing isn't a symptom of failure, it's a symptom of healing. 1 day in and the body's already repairing itself, already working to undo years of damage. After 48 hours, nicotine is completely gone from the body. Damaged nerve endings begin to regrow. Food tastes better. Coffee has a richness it hasn't had in years. The world becomes slightly more vivid, like someone turned up the saturation. People who quit notice these changes because they're looking for them. While still smokers focus on what they're giving up, quitters have trained themselves to focus on what they're getting. And then comes the 72-hour mark. This is the peak. This is where the brain throws its biggest tantrum. Headaches, nausea, cramps, anxiety, depression. The same symptoms you'd see from withdrawal from any addictive substance. Everything in you screaming for relief. This is where the identity piece becomes critical, because how you see yourself determines whether you interpret this moment as torture or transformation. Because here's what people who quit understand about cravings. They're not commands, they're sensations.
and sensations, no matter how intense, always pass. The craving that feels unbearable at minute 1 is barely noticeable by minute 10. The urge that seems like it will last forever actually peaks and fades like a wave.
People who quit have learned to observe this process instead of being consumed by it. They watch the craving arise, they notice it peak, they see it pass, and they stay still while it happens. They've discovered something that took others decades to learn. You don't have to obey every signal your brain sends you. After 72 hours, the worst is over. The storm has passed. After 1 month, the body is healing in ways most people don't realize. But more importantly, new patterns have been established. The ritual of not smoking is becoming automatic. The identity shift is solidifying. The person who white-knuckled through day 3 is starting to forget what the struggle felt like. Between 3 and 9 months, the lungs repair themselves. The tiny structures that sweep out debris start working again. Coughing decreases. Shortness of breath becomes a memory. The stares that used to wind you barely register anymore. People who quit often describe this period as the moment they forgot they were ever smokers. The habit has been replaced. The identity is complete. They've crossed a threshold that most people never reach. At 1 year, the risk of heart disease drops by almost half. Think about that for a moment. 12 months, half the risk. The body didn't give up on you. It was waiting for permission to heal. Now, let's talk about what's really happening in the minds of people who quit, because it's not what most people think. They believe they control their own outcomes. They're not waiting for the right moment, the right motivation, the right external circumstances. They've decided that the power to change sits inside them, not outside. This isn't optimism, it's orientation. They've taken ownership of a process that most people outsource to patches, pills, and programs. They've also reframed their relationship to discomfort entirely. Instead of running from withdrawal symptoms, they've learned to observe them. They notice the craving without becoming the craving. They feel the anxiety without believing the anxiety. They've developed a kind of distance from their own sensations. This isn't suppression, it's awareness. It's the ability to feel something without being controlled by it. And it's a skill that transfers to everything else in their lives. There's another dimension worth examining. People who quit have usually found a replacement ritual. The cigarette break was never just about nicotine, it was about punctuation, a reason to step outside, a moment between tasks, a breath before the next thing, a pause that said one chapter is ending and another is beginning. Successful quitters have found new ways to create these transitions. A walk around the block, a glass of water, 3 deep breaths by an open window. They didn't just eliminate a habit, they designed a new one. They understood that you can't just remove something from your life, you have to replace it with something better. And perhaps most importantly, people who quit have made peace with their past. They don't beat themselves up for the years they smoked. They don't catastrophize about the damage already done. They don't waste energy calculating how many cigarettes they consumed or how much money they spent. They've accepted that some consequences are permanent, while recognizing that the future is still unwritten. They've forgiven themselves for starting and celebrated themselves for stopping. That's not denial, that's wisdom. So what does all this add up to? People who quit smoking aren't superhuman, they aren't blessed with willpower the rest of us lack. They've simply made a series of psychological shifts that changed their relationship with the addiction. They stopped identifying as smokers. They reframed withdrawal as evidence of healing. They believed the power to change was inside them. They learned to observe cravings without obeying them. They designed replacement rituals, and they made peace with their past while taking ownership of their future. They figured something out that most people never do. The cigarette was never really the problem. The identity was. The belief that smoking was part of who they were. The moment that belief changed, quitting became not just possible, but inevitable. If you've quit, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. You've felt your body come back to life. You've watched cravings that felt impossible simply pass. You've rebuilt yourself from the inside out. And if you're still smoking, wondering if you could ever be someone who quit, here's the truth. The psychological shift can happen in a moment, a single decision. The physical healing starts 20 minutes later. Everything else is just the story of who you're becoming. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Where you point it shapes who you become. And there's nothing quite like the quiet confidence of someone who looked at an addiction designed to be unbreakable and broke it anyway. That's not just willpower, that's a complete transformation. Drop a comment and share your story. And if this resonated with you, hit like and subscribe, because we dive deep into psychology that actually explains how your mind works. See you next time.